In today's video, we're going to be talking about whether or not starting a podcast in 2023 would be a good idea for you or not. Whether you are a business or you're just starting a podcast for fun, I'm going to be giving you a lot of different scenarios, and I'm also going to be showing you actual numbers from the podcast I've run for the last 4 years. So we'll be looking at actual data of how the trends have gone over the years for how I've gained an audience and why it may or may not be a good idea for you. If that sounds good, make sure to hit the like button and let's get right into the content today. So to start off, let's look at the stats of my own show over the last few years. The real thing that would probably trouble someone, this is Apple Podcast Connect. It just goes back to January 2020 when I had about 1,900 followers. So that's how many subscriptions I had on Apple Podcasts. At the time that I switched the show from Instagram Marketing Secrets to Social Bamboo Podcast at that time, the followers went to 6,219. So between January 2020 and October 2020, my audience grew 6 times as much. Decent following. But for those of you watching on YouTube, you can see that it was really starting to turn into a lot more of a vertical trend. And then when I switched the name, it really was a big impact. And you can see that over the last few years, my followers numbers has stayed pretty much the same. It is just come and gone with people unsubscribing and people subscribing, much like a lot of people's Instagram accounts right now, where you just stay around the same amount of followers. Even if you gain 100 a month, you might lose somewhere in that ballpark, and it just doesn't really ever grow. There's a lot of people that are in that position, and a lot of that's just because it's increasingly more competitive to trend on algorithms to people outside of your target audience. Now, when you look up data online for the general podcasting market, there's really not a lot of good data out there, such to the point that I didn't even want to share any of it because the sources are usually these hosting platforms themselves, like an article from BuzzSprout or Libsyn, Podbean, and they say, podcasting is going up. It could be a $3 billion industry by this year. And it could be. But whether or not that means it's still the right time to start a show, as in it's the best idea you could possibly do, that is the question. And I think that's really part of this episode too. It's not just, oh, it's not a good idea. I'm not going to tell you it's a bad idea. Just don't do it at all without telling you do this instead. Because if there's nothing that you can think of that would be better than it, then you should absolutely start a podcast. So you can see that between the beginning of 2021 and now, the beginning of 2023, my subscriber count has been nearly the same. And what I do want to tell you is over that time, I have done paid podcast growth services to the tune of a couple $1,000s. I have been on roughly 20 different podcasts, and 19 of those 20 podcasts were much smaller than mine. I always ask, what are your download numbers? Because the only way to get the actual numbers from people is to know them and ask them and see like what is behind the scenes. And I rarely hear any of these other podcasts that I've been on having more than 300 to 500 downloads in a month. All right. And that's accumulative from all their episodes. Now, the one that was bigger than me, they told me their data as well. And they were getting 180,000 plays a month. Now, my play total per month right now, so last 30 days has been 36,000. And you can see from this chart, it really depends on the day. My release days are going to be much higher in plays. But it's a lot of the same audience listening to your stuff over time. So I absolutely love you guys who have been listening to the show for a long time. It is difficult, though, even with the amount of shares that I get on podcasts. The other thing that I've been doing, like I've been doing all of the growth tactics. I post clips from the show on YouTube Shorts, TikTok, Reels, and I pay someone to do it for me that's pretty damn good at it. I'll link some below, or you can just go over to my Instagram at Social Bamboo with an underscore at the end. Pretty much the same on TikTok, and then Derek Videll on YouTube. You can see that I'm posting these videos. They're getting quite a bit of plays as well. And it really doesn't translate to podcast plays. So you can't really grow a show on social media even though it's like kind of required to do, and you'll get some new listeners over time. And more importantly, you posting podcast clips on Instagram will help you gain an Instagram following. That's really what it's more for. When you post on YouTube, it helps you gain on YouTube. It's very difficult to cross-pollinate. The best way to grow a podcast is through search traffic on the podcast app itself. So someone saying, I'm looking for a podcast right now. Let me type in Instagram marketing, social media marketing, and just find a show. Or from being recommended on the charts. Now, to rank on the charts, this is extremely difficult. Even if you have a genuinely good show, you would have to have an existing audience outside of the podcast platform already to send so many people over there to listen to your podcast that would get you in the charts. So if you're starting a show right now, the chances that you'll get in the charts is that if you absolutely crush it over the next few years, you might get in the charts. So it's just not that easy, right? It's not like, oh, are you saying it's impossible? No, I'm just saying there's probably way better options for you gaining whatever size audience you're looking for to sell the offer you're looking for. And then some of you listening to this are maybe just looking to start a personal podcast. And to you, I'd say like just do whatever the hell you want. But if you have been thinking about starting a podcast for however many years, that's not good. I would say that you have 6 hours to start the podcast from here. And if you don't, just know that you'll never do it. That's just not how things work in life. I would love to tell you a different answer. There's no business I've ever thought of that I didn't start that day. And whenever someone tells me I've been looking to start a podcast for the last couple of years, I've never seen them ever do it. So it's just not how things work. Either you do it right now, which is so easy. A podcast is the lowest technical barrier way to produce content online right now. So you just need a mic or your phone. You can do it from your phone. I did the first episodes of my show on my phone, first 30 or 40 episodes. You can just start it immediately. You don't need any extra experience. Doing YouTube is 4 to 6 times the work at least, and it's a lot more difficult. There's a lot more skill sets that you need to do it. Everything in entrepreneurship or with side hustles in any realm are all about just starting immediately and figuring it out as you go. If you are a business that is already very skilled at content creation, you already have all the equipment you need, I'm just going to get started right now. Like, I get it, Derek. I'm going to start the podcast immediately after I just found this video online to know if I should start a podcast or not. There is one other way that you can still, that I'd still recommend doing this. And that is what I mentioned before, the search traffic on the app. In order to get search traffic on the app, you just need to title your podcast on exactly what you're trying to rank on. So for the word Instagram as well as Instagram marketing, the best way I can rank there is to just call my show Instagram Marketing Pros. Unless you're catching people at a time where they're looking for a new podcast, it's very hard to convert them just because they saw you on an Instagram post or on Twitter or LinkedIn. It doesn't mean that they're going to go over to your podcast. They're just going to enjoy that clip on the app that they're already on. In order to get the search traffic, if you wanted to make an automotive show, you'd have to just call it Automotive with Dave or whatever people are typing in, because if you don't give yourself that exact match opportunity, then you're just not going to get traffic from anywhere. The chances that your show will be getting less than 500 downloads a month after even a couple years, if you don't title your podcast just around the exact keyword you're trying to rank on, are extremely low. You would have to already have an audience that you can fuel the podcast with and then maybe get you on the charts. But like I said, that's a lot to get up there. And just because you make it in the top 100 charts doesn't mean that you at 97 is getting looked at that often. You really are trying to get in the top 20 or 30 on the charts, and it's going to be extremely difficult to do at this point of time. If you started in 2012, this would have been extremely easy. If you started in 2015, still pretty damn easy. Probably even better actually in 2015, 2018. If I had to give my honest take over why I just think people are listening to podcasts less nowadays, one would be because they aren't looking for new shows. So the podcasts that have already been established for a number of years are still getting a healthy amount of plays. New shows, though, think about it yourself. Like, when's the last time you looked for a new podcast in the podcast app itself. You said, all right, I want a show on social media marketing or just marketing, and you typed it in. A lot of people have already found those shows, and they found their crime podcast or their comedy podcast, and they're not really looking for new ones. They just are playing the previous shows to quite an extreme level. If I had to just look at my own data, I would say it's about 1/100th of the amount of search traffic that the podcast app is seeing now versus about 5 years ago when people hadn't really found their shows yet. The second reason is that the form of content is more accepting of just tangent rants, of me just turning on the mic like I kind of did today and just talking about it and thinking about it as I'm recording it in a way and just going over this data with you live. And a lot of people really appreciate it because you might be on a drive right now or doing chores around your house and you're not really looking for someone to just give you a ton of information at a rapid pace like YouTube might expect. So for me, when I publish my podcast, I have a long form version, and then on YouTube, I condense it another 20% or so, and then add the visual effects. So the upside on YouTube is a lot higher. It's also very difficult to start with a 0 subscriber account on YouTube, but I will give you a hack to build an audience a little bit quicker that doesn't rely on you having subscribers. And this strategy would be either to be a news reporter in your industry that covers a topic very quickly. So for me, as in the social media marketing industry, Instagram just announced a few days ago that they are going to have the blue verification check mark be something that people can buy. So as quickly as I could, I made a video just discussing it and what it means for businesses, and it's doing pretty well. It's got about 300 views in a couple days. That is something that doesn't matter how many subscribers you have for you to rank high. The other thing would be for you to come out with an opinion piece that is differing than most of the market on a certain subject. So when I had a crypto YouTube channel, if I came out with a negative video on why I thought a coin was about to go downhill, and every other video on there was why it's about to go to the moon, because those people were trying to mostly just get people to buy it to pump their own coins that they owned of it or to go through their affiliate link, I didn't care. I was like, I'm just here to tell the truth. And I was totally right about those crypto coins, by the way, as you guys know who have been holding on. But when I uncovered the projects from a business owner standpoint, I realized they were pretty much scams. So it's not that I was coming out with this video just to be negative for the sake of it would help me go viral. I had to be willing to take a stand on that, and I got a ton of negative comments on all those videos. But that's how I gained about 10,000 views on some of those negative videos from a channel that had less than 300 subscribers right away, just making a review that was totally different than what everyone else would see. Because while they're looking for whether or not they should buy that crypto coin or not, they see positive, 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 and then a negative review from me. So they're going to watch one or two positive, and then they got to watch the negative one because it's the only counter opinion before they would buy the coin. And that's why they did really well. So you're going to have to get creative. I can only give you examples for what I've done and, of course, people that I've worked with. But yeah, you have to be able to be creative like this to be an entrepreneur anyway. So I'll let you take it from here. But try those two strategies if you're going to go on YouTube as well as your podcast. What I'd say is if you are going to be on YouTube, then you can still record the podcast and just publish the audio on there in its raw form, or even the condensed version. Once you clip it up and edit it more for YouTube, you can post either one. But it's not that big of a deal to take a YouTube video and turn it into a podcast. It is quite a bit more work to turn a podcast audio into a full YouTube production though. So for that reason, know that if you are getting into podcasting and your goal is to get really big with it, the chances you're going to need a YouTube presence to go along with it are nearly guaranteed. So know that you are more asking yourself, am I willing to start a video podcast? It is more the question if you would need a lot of followers, a lot of views and plays before this would actually be worth it to your business. Because if you're like, look, we're trying to drive more sales, we're already a successful business, we're just seeing if we should add podcasting as a traffic source, then I would say you're doing a video podcast or you're not doing it, or you're interviewing big guests. But big guests only help you out so much, and they're pretty hard to land as a new podcast as well. So yeah, just as long as you understand what you're getting into. This would have been very easy a few years ago. It's at its hardest point ever right now, and it's only getting harder from here. I would ignore any data you see about podcast plays are up everywhere and it's a growing industry. It really is not. I saw another stat somewhere that last year was 2022 was the first year that it finally went down of the amount of downloads. I couldn't find that though, because really on Google, the people who own the search traffic on is podcasting a good idea to start right now or anything related to that are the actual publishing companies. And of course, their answer has to be yes in order for them to get new sales. So it's not the worst idea, but there's likely some better ideas that you could do out there. And if you would really like some specific information, I love coaching people in that realm so much more, because then I can actually help you out. And the whole time I'm recording these YouTube videos, I'm always kind of checking what I'm saying and making sure that what I'm telling you will actually translate to know what to do next. And I do know that so many of you out there have unique situations that this might have not answered exactly what you should do here. So feel free to DM me on Instagram and just let me know the podcast you're looking to start. If you already have the audience, the skill set, then it's not a bad idea to get this going if you can fuel your own podcast listeners right at the beginning. Otherwise, it's not on an uptrend right now. So I would pay attention to things that are more on an uptrend. And there's only so many things that are obvious right now to us entrepreneurs as far as the social media realm goes. There's not like the new Clubhouse or anything going on like that. TikTok is now entering its first year of maturity, I would say, where it's a lot more difficult to get followers. But yeah, that's why we're entrepreneurs. You got to figure it out anyways. If Instagram ads is maybe what you'd rather turn to, then be sure to get my free course on how to run Instagram ads in 2023 below. Thanks for listening, guys. I'll talk to you soon.